What's going on, everyone? Today is November 28th, 2023. Welcome to the Invested in Hockey podcast. My name is Anthony Santini, joined here with
Eric Wilson.
Today, we're going to be chatting about the NHL, what was the past week, and what is to come. It was a great week of hockey, couple injuries, couple of new signings. We have the brand new news that just broke this morning. Patrick Kane is a Detroit Red Wing going forward for the remainder of the season.
Big news, huge news. I think no one really knew where he was going to go. There was rumblings a couple of weeks ago about being linked to Florida, being linked to the Leafs just because of the whole Oakville thing, being linked to the Bruins. I honestly, I don't think anyone knew where he was going to go, but he's on another Original Six team. What can we say about that?
It's kind of like interesting to me because I think that Patrick Kane, we talked about it 2 weeks ago, and Patrick Kane was pretty much just. It seemed like he wanted to sign with a contender, and you would think that he'd sign like on a big team, like you said, like the Leafs, Florida, just made it to the finals last year. Even Elliot Friedman was chatting yesterday he was chatting about the Boston Bruins, and I was like, what the heck? And as Bruins fans, I mean, that'd be pretty sweet. It's not the greatest signing ever, but it would definitely help the team. Like same when you look at for the Leafs, like you don't need them, but it wouldn't hurt, right?
Seriously, yeah.
So when I heard that news, I mean, I love Patrick Kane. Growing up, he was my favorite player. I'm happy wherever he goes, but I don't think Detroit's really going to win a cup this year.
I don't know what the deal is. They're in a good spot right now. I think they're second in the Atlantic, but yeah. I don't know. They lack some defensive end, kind of just having good bodies on defense. After losing Hronek, I wasn't too impressed with their lineup there, but I guess this means Detroit's all in, and they're done their rebuilding. I don't know what you think about that, but they're done the rebuilding phase, it looks like, and they're basically saying we need to make a playoff push here, and we're going to sneak into a wild card spot, or we're going to take a top 3 spot in the Atlantic, right?
It doesn't make sense, though, because, like you are in your rebuilding phase, the Yzer plan, all the jokes, stuff like that, but, like, Detroit wasn't really coming into the season thinking. I didn't even think Detroit would be like a borderline playoff team. Like I thought they would be in the lottery, like not really that good. I know like you add players like DeBrincat, Siders kind of growing into his own good player, but like I never really expected them to say in the front office like, okay, this is a year where we need to make a push. We have a goalie, we have the defense, our forwards are buzzing. Like it doesn't make sense, but when you have an opportunity to get a player like Patrick Kane, I mean, like how can you pass that up? So it's almost a no-brainer.
Yeah, so again, you said they're buzzing, and I think they're buzzing this year. I didn't really clue in, but they added JT Compher, and he's been pretty good for them, right? Like I've noticed he's been winning some huge draws on the power play, especially even on the PK there. So it's like those little adds are making a difference. I think Costin's only been there for a year. I don't know if he signed in the offseason or what.
Yeah, he signed, I don't know if he signed or trade, but I know that Edmonton let him go because he was playing the playoffs last year. He was good. Like, for him to be a fourth liner, that just goes to show these guys are pretty deep. I don't know deep enough to really, like, cause issues for people in the playoffs. Like, I don't know. It doesn't seem like an effective team with big names, but when you go to look at some of the past championship teams, like you look at the Vegas Golden Knights, they don't have a lot of big flashy names. Like sure, you have Eichel, you have Stone, Pietrangelo, like a couple big names, good hockey players, but no one too flashy. And I guess that's kind of the route that Yzerman wants to go for. Not flashy names, but hockey players.
Yeah, it honestly reminds me a little, like that depth in their lineups reminded me a little bit about the Kraken last year when they beat the Avalanche in the first round. It kind of goes to show you don't need those big names on your team. They had guys like Yanni Gourde, Jordan Eberle. A guy on Detroit like David Perron is the perfect example of someone who is going to get the job done, has experience. Perron is a cup, like you know what I mean. And I don't know, it's really interesting because again that team is a lot of brand new guys. Even Goss is Bears new, no? So like,
yeah.
It's and Petrie too. Like I don't know. They've got to get it done, and I guess that's the Yzer plan. So good chat about that.
Yeah, the Yzer plan looks like it's working out so far. Adding Patrick Kane this morning. One of the more interesting aspects of this sign is the number 88 that's up for debate now. I know. I don't believe there's any news of him taking number 88 for sure, but as of right now, Daniel Sprong does wear the number, and I'm sure they'll come to some sort of agreement. I mean, if you're Daniel Sprong, how can you tell, a 9-time, I believe, All-Star, Stanley Cup winner Patrick Kane, one of the best American-born players of all time. That I don't think you're taking my number from me, buddy. Like I can't imagine that happening. But
Yeah, I honestly was going to ask you the question: can you change numbers in the middle of a season?
yeah, you can.
You can. Okay,
Yeah.
so
I
there's
think
no limits there.
Nylander did it right.
I thought that was in the off season. No, I genuinely haven't seen it being done in the middle of a season. Usually, it's like, oh, a new guy comes in the off season, you change numbers. I'd love to fact check that.
Yeah,
Just because I genuinely don't know, but I think like anyone would be happy to do it for Patrick Kane unless you're a guy who's been in the league as long as him. Unless it was a guy like Jonathan Toews on Chicago, where they obviously weren't fighting for numbers. But
So just searching up on Google, I mean, this is on Wikipedia, so I don't know how well I can trust it, but it says players cannot change numbers mid-season, but they used to be able to.
okay, see, that's what I thought. It makes sense. You shouldn't be able to change numbers in the middle of a season. So that looks caked, I guess. I mean, it's a good debate to have, but
But on that same note, actually, it looks like Sportsnet just tweeted out that Daniel Sprong will give up his number for Patrick Kane.
okay.
So I don't know how this works now, but I mean, like I said, I don't know how much you could trust Wikipedia. I don't want to be for sure, but yeah, no, that is interesting, and just kind of shift back to our topic of looking at the Detroit Red Wings moving forward. You look at some of the past Stanley Cup championship teams and the players that they have and the caliber, how good they are, and it looks like maybe in a couple years Detroit could be that team, but I don't know if they're that team right now. You look at a player like Cale Makar and how well he did the season that they won the Stanley Cup and hasn't slowed down this year at all.
Yeah, I mean, you got no one close to Cale Makar in the league right now in terms of defensemen. The craziest thing that I looked at after last night's huge game is it was Avs Tampa. Great game to watch. I actually had both goalies playing in my fantasy matchups, Georgiev and Vasilevsky, which we're going to get to that. But Makar leads that team in points. He has more points than Nathan McKinnon, which is just absurd. And honestly, like we had a little post on our Instagram about him being a possible Norris lock, and I think he's running away with it. It's amazing. Goal and assist last night.
I mean, to say that he's running away with it, I believe is a little bit recency bias, but like you look at any other season, and I think he's the clear-cut Norris winner. Like I know we've talked about Quinn Hughes. He's been playing so good this year. So good. Like it's tough for me to say, yeah, Cale Makar is going to win it for sure, especially when Quinn Hughes is having the season that he is. But like 32 points in 21 games, that's like a first-line power play forward.
It's nuts.
Like, it's crazy that a defenseman's doing that. Funny enough, you're talking about the game from last night. I was looking up a stat, and I would like to fact-check this from what I saw, but it said that Cale Makar is second in Avalanche assists. I don't know if that was true. Maybe I read it incorrectly.
Yeah, that'd be pretty crazy, but because I'd say McKinnon's got more assists than him.
That's what I saw. So this might be a topic for next week because I didn't fact check it. It was just something that crossed my mind because I was watching the end of the game yesterday, and that's what they're chatting about. But yeah, I don't know. That's something I could be wrong on, but I mean, he's so good that I almost don't doubt the stat.
I know. Right? It's weird because honestly, like I assume you're talking all-time Avs or current Avs. One of the two.
I think the stat was all-time Avs, so assists in an Avalanche uniform. But it would make sense that McKinnon would have more. No,
yeah,
I don't know. I could have totally heard it wrong. I'm just kind of talking off what I saw. I was basically falling asleep watching the game too. So not that it was not entertaining. I was just tired.
I mean, that was kind of the game of the week so far. I mean, probably the game of the week, even when we look at the rest of the slates this week, which we'll do at the end of this topic.
Yeah, well, there was that game too that we were watching. What was that? Vancouver Avalanche?
Vancouver Avs. Yeah, I guess that was last week.
And that was a pretty good hockey game too. Yeah.
Exactly.
One of the better hockey games coming in early 2024 is going to be the All-Star game. And I know All-Star games in any league are just kind of, I don't know how to put it. They're just weird. I know the past 5 years haven't really been, like you don't see a lot of viewers really celebrate the opportunity to watch all the best players on one ice just because the players don't go like as hard at an NHL game, which is a little bit interesting. And I'm sure eventually we'll get into that topic of playing Olympic hockey, and that's when you really see best on best hockey, everyone going 100%.
Yeah, it's really weird with that whole All-Star game because there's so many topics. You can talk about the guys who don't participate. You can talk about the improvements they made in the last few years, which obviously brings us to that Sportsnet article that we were looking at, which is the player draft returning, which is kind of like our topic to discuss. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, so for those of you that haven't heard yet, the NHL All-Star Draft is returning. They haven't done it in a couple of years now.
2012.
So almost, 11 years. It's crazy. But something that I definitely watched growing up, and everyone remembers Ovechkin trying to go last, and I think Phil Kessel ended up going last, and like he wanted the new car. It was all funny, but it'll be interesting to see some of the new faces in the draft, and definitely even cooler to see probably Crosby and Ovechkin still, I'm assuming, being in that All-Star draft too, which is going to be pretty cool.
Yeah. So one thing that's interesting to discuss is that I believe it's one player per team. So that's 32 players. I don't believe that there's any other players. That's what I've seen. Is that the last 4 picks is something special, which means maybe there's going to be 36 picks. I believe there's some alumni involved because they brought up the Players Hockey Association, which I'm a little confused too, but they haven't released what these last 4 picks are going to be, but they said there's something special coming.
Well, I'm sure they'll have some sort of good idea to make the game a little bit more interesting and kind of add to it. It feels like every year the NHL always tries their best to add some sort of fun aspect to the game that makes it a little bit better because like I started off chatting about, people don't really love the All-Star game, even though I've always enjoyed it. I mean, I watch all the skill competitions. They always have something fun going on. So it is pretty interesting to see that they are adding the All-Star draft. And for me, I'm a massive fan of that.
Yeah, we're going to have to watch that whole weekend now that it's
no doubt. 3 days, yeah.
I'm excited for that, yeah.
Yeah, something that is not as exciting, almost a little bit disappointing, is Taylor Hall going down and placed on the LTIR. It looks like he's going to be out for the remainder of the season, and it's a little bit disappointing to see that he goes down. Obviously, things happen, and he did get injured in that game against Tampa, but something that looks so opportunistic, I guess you could say is the right word, throughout the summer, and he was supposed to mesh well with Connor Bedard. It just didn't really work out.
It's unfortunate. Honestly, it sucks to say, but he's been given all the opportunity in the world. He's been on 6 different teams now. He's played with some amazing players in Connor McDavid, Bergeron, Pasternak, all these skilled guys. And I mean, you can't really tell when an injury is coming, but it didn't look like he was having an amazing year. He was starting off fine, but it wasn't like he was the reason that Bedard was propelled to another level. I think that Bedard took that to himself, and I think it's really interesting when we talk about injuries. There's other guys we're talking about too, but November's a huge month for guys coming back to move into a little bit of a positive light. We have guys like Tage Thompson who should return late November. Trevor Zegras should be back soon as well. I'm going to say in the next 2 weeks, those guys should be back. Call it early December, late November. I feel like those injury reports usually are a lengthy timeline, and if guys return sooner than later, it's just seen as a good thing, right?
Yeah, I feel like they almost do that on purpose because you can say right now, today's November 28th, and you could say, a player's going to be back mid-New Year, call it mid-January, and if they end up back even before Christmas, it looks great on the team, great on the training staff, everything. You also don't want to give fans the opportunity to say, Tage Thompson could play next week, and then something happens, he re-aggravates his injury. And then fans are angry, right? I was actually listening to the press conference of Brad Treliving chatting about John Klingberg and his injury, and he kind of made it, he was very, very persistent to say, like, we should have an update this week, but it is very possible that we won't. So he is kind of, like we were just chatting about, he didn't want to say, he will be back next week, we're going to give you an answer by next week. He pretty much said, you know what, we're going to chat about this in a week from now. I should have better answers, but it is very possible that I won't have those answers for you guys. And that's another story talking about the injuries where we haven't seen a lot of clarity. And with John Klingberg, you look at Zegras, not a lot of clarity on his injury. It's kind of like these two players have just kind of disappeared. Right?
Exactly. It makes you wonder like how accurate these reports are, right? When you search up NHL injury report and you look at all these sources, who really knows, right? The only guy who knows is the player and the
Yeah.
trainers who are
And they're not going to
treating
give out
him.
information, right? Like when
Exactly.
you go to play against Zegras and you see that he hurt his wrist, what's the first thing a player like Pat Maroon's going to do? He's going to go after his wrist. He's going to slash him. Nice two-hander to the wrist after the whistle, something like that. So that's why when you look at a lot of injuries and almost like any sport too, like not just the NHL, no team, trainer, player will really go into depth with their injury. We saw that with Connor McDavid too. They said he was going to be week to week, and then out of nowhere he misses like 2 games and he's right back playing in the Heritage Classic.
Exactly.
So, yeah, that's always nice to see. Something that isn't as good to see. A terrible weekend. And for 2 top teams in the NHL, the Leafs and the Bruins, with some bad weekend, little losing streak going on. If you want to touch up on that,
Yeah,
a little bit.
Yeah, I'm not happy. There's little to say just because like it's only a few games and it's an 82 game season, but the Bruins should have squeaked out a win against the Red Wings or the Rangers on back to backs. The Leafs certainly should have beaten either the Blackhawks or the Penguins, right? And it's just like so disappointing to see. As again, we're from the GTA, we're from Toronto's our hometown, so seeing that as Bruins fans, seeing them lose, and then just seeing the Atlantic almost like not look like the best division in the league when it should be, right? Like I don't know, it sucks seeing 3-game skids, but I know they happen. But like for the Bruins, yeah, they lost last night to the Jackets. Like that was almost the icing on the cake for me. I wouldn't have talked about it on the podcast if it was a 2-game skid for them, but that 3-game compares to that 2-game skid for the Leafs. I don't know.
Sorry, finish up?
No, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry to cut you off there. But, like you were saying with the Bruins, 3-game losing streak, 2-game losing streak for the Leafs. And when you look at and kind of dive deep into those 2 games with the Leafs, so the first game, Chicago, they lost in overtime. And if you remember, William Nylander did have that overtime chance where it hits 3 bars. Like that's insane. It's almost like bad luck or the hockey gods. Something's going on. I don't know. It was a little interesting, but it goes to show the power of an extra point in the NHL, and we'll see how, that affects their team. But let's not forget they are coming off that trip to Sweden. So I guess I don't want to make the excuse, but they are kind of getting back into the swing of things. Let's not kind of put that to the side and use that as an excuse for their 2-game losing streak. But I know they have a game against Florida, I believe, tonight, and then the Kraken on Friday. Or Thursday's the Kraken.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting seeing those midweek games, especially on the road. I assume they're visiting Seattle for that one.
Yeah.
Honestly, that kind of brings me to mention some of the other games I was watching this weekend. We had the Sharks beat the Canucks, which is just another like nasty upset. I mean, I think that one was 4-2 or something, 4-3. It was a close game, but like it just is like, what in the world's happening here? You see the Sharks kind of convert on every chance they get. And then you see the Canucks play some good hockey, but maybe that's where some of my bias is against Quinn Hughes, and maybe saying once they lost to the Sharks, I wanted to ride the Makar train a little more. You know what I'm trying to say there.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. It almost puts in perspective that any team could beat anyone, and literally, like, the Sharks beat the Canucks, one of the hottest teams in the NHL.
Exactly.
When you go back 3 weeks ago, we were chatting Sharks with a disaster season and Canucks quite the opposite, and you look and see the Sharks beat the Canucks. Like, it doesn't make a lot of sense, but for me, when you're talking about an 82-game season, things like that happen, and I think that a team like that, like the Canucks, can actually prosper from losing like that, because I believe it was an away game.
Yeah, they were home, I think.
Or they were home?
Yeah.
So, I mean, similar story. You're not just going to have a team travel, like San Jose, come to your barn and just kind of give you pizzas and give you the win.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it definitely is what games like that for me is what I think molds the Stanley Cup champion, and to see that happen, I actually think is a benefit for the Canucks. And for the Sharks, I mean, it's kind of a toss-up. At the end of the day, you want to lose games. You want to be in that first overall conversation. So,
yeah, for sure. That brings us into our last kind of a bit of another negative topic, but in the last 10 games kind of for each team, we have, I believe it's 6 teams. No, it's 5 teams that have 7+ wins, and we don't see any team that is 9-1-0 or 10-0 in their last 10. But just to highlight a few teams here, the Panthers, Rangers, Avalanche, Jets, and Kings have 7+ wins. Does any of those teams stand out to you?
I think the biggest team for me that stands out is the Avalanche. I was chatting about it yesterday with you, and I sent you a text, and I don't know, man. The Avalanche are good. Like they're a good hockey team. They have good hockey players. And watching that game last night against Tampa Bay, it just kind of showed me like I pretty much watched two games last night. I watched Colorado and Tampa, and I watched, which was also a really good hockey game, Vegas and Calgary.
Yeah.
And Uyghur got that really nice end-to-end overtime winner. It was such a beauty.
I did hear that.
It was really nice. But the first thing that came to my mind after watching that game and then watching the Tampa Lightning game was like these are different hockey teams. Like it almost feels like they're in a different tax bracket. I was never a big Vegas Golden Knights fan, and they're 3-5-2 in their last 10, so not really chugging along the hardest. But for me, I think the Avalanche and Tampa Bay are two of the best teams in the NHL, undoubtedly.
Oh yeah,
two good goalies, two good defense, like forwards, power plays are moving. Like they should be at the top of the conversation, and a little bit for me at least, I have a different output on the Leafs and Bruins versus Colorado and Tampa Bay.
Yeah, I mean, I will agree with you in the fact that I don't think it's very close between, the Avs and Tampa, and then a team like the Leafs and the Bruins in terms of consistency, in terms of star power. A couple of weeks ago, when the Bruins were first in the league, it's a little harder to hate on them and say, okay, they're not the best because they have the best record, but at this point, you're seeing a 15-6-0 start from Colorado. You're seeing those names like Ryan Johansson contribute well. It's not just McKinnon and Makar, but it's pretty awesome to see. I mean, for me, the Jets are the most surprising. They're actually 8-2-0 in their last 10, and that is a really good sign for a guy like Connor Hellebuyck, who has never really had a great 10-game stretch in the last 2 years. It's just the way it's been with Winnipeg. He starts a lot of games. They got a weak backup goalie. I don't even know who their backup is right now.
Brossoit. I think I'm pronouncing it incorrectly, but it's Brossoit.
Yeah, Laurent. Yeah, Brossoit.
Am I saying that correctly?
I guess that's probably their best backup in a few years. I just remember the years when they were struggling. They had Eric Comrie in. I want to say they had Hutchinson as well for a year.
Yeah, I think that was last year actually.
Yeah, and it was honestly just you can't play those goalies because that team just looks deflated whenever a guy like Hellebuyck isn't there, surrounding them at getting 30-plus shots a game. I'm not saying I believe in the Jets more than a team like the Avs, but this could be a huge turn for the Jets to just stay hot, maybe take a second place in that division over a team like Dallas. And again, it's nice to see for a team like the Jets. We've talked about Kyle Connor in some previous podcasts. He's playing great. Nick Ehlers had the nasty goal. I'm sure you saw that.
Disgusting.
Through the legs.
That was so nice. That was so nice.
You got to love those goals. So
even though they're flashy, I know stats are stats, and that's why you can't be a box score watcher. I know some of our friends are box score watchers, which moment of silence for them is a little bit disappointing, but yeah, I don't know. You can't be a box score watcher. You got to enjoy the hockey games. You can't sit on Twitter all day, but we'll have to let them know that.
Yeah.
Moving on to our next aspect of the podcast is still touching on that 10-game stretch and more staying on that positive side of things is Kent Johnson, not in the NHL, but in the AHL. 10 games played, 15 points. Really good down there. And it's weird. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me why Columbus hasn't called him up because they do have a massive hole right now at the center position.
Yeah, honestly, that team is. It scares me a little just to see if there's any negative things going on in the locker room. But they haven't gelled the best. Obviously, they just beat the Bruins last night. So let's try and stick to the positives and say, okay, if they just beat the Bruins, they're not going to call Kent Johnson up. The whole line A winger versus center thing's still up in the air. I haven't watched enough games to tell you if he's been playing more center than wing, but. At the end of the day, I think their power play is doing fine. Werenski had that 4-assist game a couple games ago. Fantilli's playing well. Other than that, though, back to that kind of AHL topic, Ken Johnson is second on that AHL team in points behind Trey Wicks-Folansky, that other prospect for them.
Really? He's I actually saw that a couple of days ago. He got called up. Do you know how many points he has?
I think he has 21 in the AHL,
wow,
which is pretty awesome. We're big hockey card guys, and obviously he has a young guns we've seen a lot. So
that's actually funny because he does have that young gun. For everyone that doesn't know, me and Eric do collect hockey cards. A young gun is basically a rookie card for a player, so Yeah, I've seen his young gun before. I don't know. I'm not too familiar with his game, but yeah, I didn't even know he's playing that well. I'm sure they got them on the line together, but it seems
Yeah.
like Columbus has a good little crop brewing down there in the
Oh,
AHL.
exactly. And just two other guys I mentioned in the AHL while I was kind of looking at some stats last night. Two guys without a rookie card so far. Prospects coming up are Logan Stankoven and Maverick Bork on the Dallas Stars.
Logan Stankoven, Puck Doku,
Oh, exactly.
first round draft pick.
I guess he's played a
Winnipeg Jets
game.
this morning. Yeah, well, he was 1% too.
Really?
Pretty sharp.
See,
Pretty
honestly,
sharp.
you're sharp for knowing that because I actually did not know that. I assumed he was always with Dallas, which I guess he
A little
wasn't.
sharp.
But yeah, honestly, Bork and Stankoven lighting it up for Texas in the AHL there. Great to
Yeah,
see.
it's always nice to see players lighting it up, and a player that really, I mean, in the past 5 years, just talking about the NHL, when you talk about some of the top five players in the NHL, top three players, even top 10, like his name almost, it feels like it doesn't come up. Nikita Kucherov, it's a weird conversation because he is easily, for me, one of the best wingers in the league and undoubtedly one of the best players in the league. But when you kind of rank off and you and your buddies chat about top 10 players, Kucherov isn't one of the first players that comes out of your
Yeah,
mouth.
he's gonna come up in that ton of it. Yeah, people are automatically thinking about the guys who are on maybe original six teams. As a Bruins fan, I would never say this, but there are a lot of people that automatically just think Pass is maybe the best winger in the league, which he's not. Kucherov has shown it. He's got his two cups. There's nothing bad about his game. He's great. He scored the first goal of the season this year in that
Yep.
first game.
Yep.
He can pass the puck too. Nothing will ever beat that highlight of him just undressing Ekblad and then
Oh
feeding
yeah.
it over.
Yeah.
It looked effortless. It's nuts.
That's the best part about his game is because he doesn't work too hard. It's just effortless. Like he's just so talented. He could set players up. The only thing I would say is that he's not the best defender on the ice. And when you look at the playoffs, you kind of need players that can go play a what's the saying, 200-foot game, 300-foot
Yeah,
game,
200 foot.
200-foot
Yeah.
game. You need players that could do that, and it's almost like his offensive ability makes up for the defensive aspect of his game. But he's just one of the best players in the NHL. He's playing like at 36 points in 21 games, and it's weird to say that almost a month ago Jack Hughes was the undoubted Hart Trophy winner, but this goes to show that an 82 game season could change anything. Injuries could change anything, and it looks like Nikita Kucherov is running away with it right now.
Yeah, exactly. 10 games can change the narrative. 5 games, right? People are going to have a lot of biases. Recency bias, we've talked about that.
Yeah.
And I think we're seeing that in how maybe our top couple players look. I'm going to ask you if you can come up with your top three players for the rest of the season and let me know. I'm going to give you mine after, and I want to see how similar we are. You're allowed to be
All right.
boring. You can
So
name
just
them.
make it easy.
Yeah, make it easy.
All right. Well, I'll do this. I'll do one forward, one defender, and one goalie. How about that?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
So let's think. So, I mean, first off, it's got to be Connor McDavid. Like, undoubtedly one of the best players on any ice, any sheet of ice,
Yep.
anywhere in the world.
Yep.
I think Connor McDavid going forward is going to be one of the best players. If we're going to erase all stats starting from last night and just go forward, I think McDavid will drop 100 points, no problem.
Yeah, for sure.
So I think that's kind of a conversation that will always be there, him being the best. Defense, I'm going to switch it up a little bit. I think Moritz Seider is going to be one of the better defensemen in the league going forward. I know Quinn Hughes and Cale Makar have been amazing, but when you look at adding Patrick Kane and one of the best offensive players that's ever been produced from America, I think Patrick Kane can help Seider take that extra step in his game. Which, it's what a young player needs, and for a player like Kane, it's almost like they could thrive off each other. You know what I mean?
For sure.
Because Patrick Kane's game is changing a little bit. In net, I'm going to say that Vasilevsky is going to be the best goalie going forward. He's coming off injury. He seems fresh. He has a win and a loss in the past 2 games. And, I mean, Vasilevsky is still one of the best goalies in the league. I think he's going to be that going forward. And Tampa Bay, with their dreams of another Stanley Cup, he could bring them there.
Yeah,
So,
I don't mind that at all. I mean, to be honest with you, I didn't do the whole goalie, defenseman, forward thing. I just went with my 3 best guys. Number 3, Cale Makar. Number 2, Nikita Kucherov. And number 1, Connor McDavid. It was really tough picking the number 3 guy, but I don't know. The way Cale Makar is playing, I couldn't leave him out of the top 3. So those are my top 3 guys. I think it was a nice little segment to do. And yeah.
But yeah, we'll finish up with our callers and see what they have to say. So our first caller here.
Hey guys, it's Josh from Brampton. Just wondering what your thoughts are on the Connor McDavid recent hot streak and if the Edmonton Oilers can turn this bus around. Thanks.
So yeah, thanks for the call. Really appreciate that. And
Yeah, honestly, to just kind of keep that into perspective, I'm still a little worried about the Oilers in terms of the goaltending situation. They haven't done anything really other than call up Calvin Pickard a couple weeks ago. I don't think they're going to end up winning that division. Just to give my kind of prediction, I don't know what you have to say about that, Sans.
I mean, like I said in our last segment, I think Connor McDavid going forward is going to be the best forward in the league, and I don't see that changing. I definitely agree that they're going to be a Stanley Cup contender. They just need to figure out a goalie, find some sort of rhythm, and if they can't do that, I know Connor McDavid will. So something's got to give there.
Things are looking okay. Things are looking okay, and they don't look amazing. They don't look bad, and it's in the middle right now.
Definitely agree.
Good. Thanks, Josh.
All right, so heading to our second caller.
Sup, boys? This is George from Ottawa. My question for you guys this week is, what can the Sens do to turn the bus around? We just watched them last night get absolutely bullied by the Florida Panthers. Where is there room for improvement? Is it the coaching? Is it the playing? I just want to know your thoughts. Thanks.
Yeah, so George, thanks for the call. All the way from Ottawa. That's pretty cool.
Pretty awesome, yeah.
I'm a little bit biased, so I'm a Ottawa Senators fan, quote unquote. I mean, I do like them. They're not one of my favorite teams. I think it's another team where something's got to give, right? They have so much talent, but nothing's really meshing.
Yeah, honestly, just because this is on my mind, I'm going to call you out a little and call out not even call out George, but call out you a little. At the start of the year, I said something about Ottawa, and I said they lack defense, and you kind of said no. You're like, dude, I don't agree.
So the opposite,
and you said the opposite, and I said they lack defense. Let's see how the year goes. I don't know how it's going to go, but pretty much what I'm trying to say and what I think in terms of turning this bus around, they need a full effort from their top guys to like almost be extra defensive and not to worry about getting all those shots on net, getting all those nice cycle game going that they have. Like they have the depth scoring where those top guys on the team, let's call it Brady Tkachuk, for example, he loves to shoot the puck. Perfect example from last night. They had, I think, 6 shots through half the game, which was pretty bad. But I watched Brady Tkachuk shoot the puck, miss the net, puck went around. The other team came down, scored a minute later. I hate to call them out, but honestly, I think they just need to work on the defensive structure.
For sure. All right, so finishing up here with Eric's predictions. Last week you had 3 correct answers out of the 5, so 3 correct, 2 wrong. And starting with November 28th, we're going to go with the Leafs and Florida Panthers.
So for the Leafs-Panthers game, I'm going to go with the Leafs here. I think they turn things around after a tough weekend.
Next up, we got Washington and LA Kings.
That Washington team is terrible. LA is doing well. I wouldn't even mind a shutout here, but LA is going to take that game.
Edmonton and Winnipeg on November 30th.
Honestly, Winnipeg's going to win that game. Got to fade the Oilers there.
Sweet. Back on that topic of Ottawa, we have the Ottawa Senators visiting the Columbus Blue Jackets.
Yeah, Ottawa's taking that one for sure.
Okay. Saturday, massive game. Bruins and Leafs. Love that rivalry.
Let's go Bruins. I'm Bruins all the way. Let's go.
Love it. Nashville and Buffalo on December 3rd.
I'm going to take Nashville. Ryan O'Reilly's a stud. I think I got my Nashville one right the other day, so let's go Nashville.
Nice. And to wrap it up, we have the Arizona Coyotes, don't talk about them enough, and the Washington Capitals.
Oh, man, talk about a dud game. Honestly, we need the Caps there. I can't fade them twice in the same week, so let's go Caps.
Perfect. All right, that wraps up our Invested in Hockey podcast for this week. Thank you, everyone, for listening. I am Anthony Santini. That is
Eric Wilson.
We appreciate everyone for listening. Have a great week.
Cheers.